for Manhattan. You know, this studio facility and stuff. Last couple of years, they finally got it together here.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
I thought I was coming to Paragon's, the ex-Paragon thing here on 100.
They used to have it on 125th Street.
Yeah, but there's one on 23rd Street, though. Wasn't there? There were offices of Paragon here.
Well, I don't know.
No.
Yeah. Well, welcome very much to Conversations, where we're pleased to honor to the program a man probably needs no introduction at all to the city of New York, being Percy Sutton. He's had an illustrious career in virtually all aspects of New York City and beyond. And Percy Sutton, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Very glad to be here in conversation with you.
Yes, indeed, and to a Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Yes. I said at the beginning we just liked it to be this piece, and any event might be a bit abbreviated, but we wanted to have a great deal of time to talk with you because your career is really one that just is into so many things. I wonder, maybe you could for us, just to set things up. You've been involved, you're out of Texas originally.
Yes, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I grew up in a large family, a family of 15. I was the youngest. My father was my junior high school principal, and that mean disciplinarian was there when I got to high school. My mother was my first grade teacher, and 6 of my older brothers and sisters taught me before I was graduated from high school.
Yeah, you can learn a lot there.
And I was in a number of family business, undertaking business, the funeral supply business, the mattress making business, and real estate business. And in each of those businesses, each Sutton was required to work. And I learned a lot about discipline, hard work, such that when I came to New York here, I used to work from 4 p.m. to midnight in the post office at 32nd Street and 8th Avenue.
Really?
Then at 12:30, I became the conductor on the D train from 34th Street until 8:30 in the morning. Then at 9 o'clock, I reported either to Columbia University or Brooklyn Law School. I did that for 4 years. And on weekends, when I wasn't in school, I was a waiter at Lundy's in Sheepshead Bay.
You had it on all sides.
Right? Oh, yeah.
And that was during
7 days a week. 16 hours a day of work.
Yeah, and you got time you served in the Second War?
I was in World War II, plus I was in the Korean conflict as well.
So you
I went to the Korean conflict because I thought I must have flunked law school. I must have flunked the bar examination because it was too easy. And then after I got in there, Harold, I found out that I passed the bar in New York, and there I was, stuck 3 more years in the military in Washington and a variety of other places.
Oh, I see, you did that. And then you got involved also, of course, in the political realm.
Yes.
You were in the legislature for a while.
Yes, I was in the state legislature for 2 years. But before I got in the state legislature, in Central Harlem, where I still live, I've been there for 50 years, I lost elections for 11 consecutive years. I either ran myself, I ran on a young man called Charles Rangel, a young man named Basil Paterson, a young man called David Dinkins. And for 12 consecutive, almost 12 years, we lost, year after year after year. But and when I tell people about the need to persevere, to be willing to work hard, to sacrifice. I'm telling them about something that I did.
Yeah, and you were all the time also in the middle of the civil rights thing.
I was, yes, I've been in jails. Yes, I've been in some of the better jails in America. I was in protesting as a member of the military in Italy and in Selfridgefield, Michigan. So I've been very lucky to have good health.
Right.
Of course, I've been through prostate cancer and bladder cancer, and now I'm into bladder cancer again. And I still wake up in the morning. I'm still happy to be alive.
You're still out there, and then of course you were for 12 years nearly borough president of Manhattan.
Then I ran for mayor. I lost, and then I went into I already was in newspaper business. I owned the Amsterdam News. I owned WLIB radio and then WBLS, and I bought some other radio stations, and then I have a cable television station out in Queens. And so one of the most exciting things I'm doing right now, though, is I'm not doing it, some of the kids who work with me are doing it. I'm putting a mobile satellite over Africa with a footprint over the Middle East and a portion of Turkey. This is going to be a unique thing for me because we will be able to have direct from handpiece to satellite and return communications, mobile telecommunications.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. What's been going on? I mean, the silicon chip came along only until what, 1971 or something like that.
Yeah.
This last 25
Can you imagine
years has been
that?
amazing. And it just gets almost mind-boggling to think 25 years out.
Yeah.
What's happening
Yeah.
in terms of technological development.
Yeah.
You were in the political thing. You were also attorney to Malcolm X.
I was Malcolm X's attorney. I've been Jesse Jackson's attorney. I've been attorney for a number of people. Anybody who wanted a free attorney. I'm just coming from court right now.
That's right. That's why
as I talk to you, because there's a couple of people who were in the picket line with me protesting with regard to South Africa at one time. Some of the people didn't come back when they were supposed to come back, and they've been subpoenaed to jail, to court, because otherwise they'll go to jail. So that's where I'm coming from now.
What was it like being an attorney for Malcolm X? He's bigger than life in legendary terms now. In his day, he was a very controversial figure when you were an attorney.
When I was heading the NAACP.
All right, yeah.
Entirely different organization.
Let me ask you off front. Was it difficult to be associated as attorney for a man as controversial as he was in his time?
Yes, it was, Harold. As a matter of fact, there were people who wanted me out of the NAACP because, and I was willing to do that. The reason I was is on one of the shows just like this, except it was radio one day, I was called in to, quote, debate Malcolm X. And I wasn't as good as he was. And so in the course of events, he said, you know, you talk all this civil rights and human rights, he said, but you would never represent anybody like me. I was talking about the three things that I did. I said, yes, I will. And I started representing him without pay. And then, of course, when I also represented a young man named Farrakhan, who had just come along, a man named Elijah Muhammad. And as he left, I never became a Muslim. I remained in the civil rights arena. As Malcolm left and later was killed, I became surrogate parent to their children.
And to Betty Shabazz.
Betty Shabazz.
Daughters,
And you may know recently out in Minnesota, I, together with Bill Kunstler, we were the attorneys for one of the daughters charged with conspiracy to kill Farrakhan. And that matter, the young lady who was then charged works for me now at one of my radio stations in San Antonio, Texas. Which is a fascinating story, the Texas thing.
You mean your media story in Texas? Are the roots you're coming out of Texas? Or what?
Well, when I was, no, she works with me in Texas. But what is very interesting is that the way I got into all of this business of radio was there was a radio station in San Antonio that I couldn't even go into when I was a child. And I used to go around with a corn cob to my mouth saying, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Percy Sutton from high in the clouds with the Smith Young Tower, San Antonio, Texas." It was a dream, a corn cob. I want you to know I own that radio station now.
Good for you. Good for you.
But I got interested, and she's working down there for me. Another one of the Shabazz young ladies works for me here in New York. But I don't run the radio stations anymore. My son runs them, and my daughter, and my nieces, and my nephews.
Pierre?
Pierre.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and but that's a delicate thing, because, and it's also interesting, a lawyer, as well as a media person, can be in a certain sense. My father was an attorney, and it happens, he was a lawyer, is in a certain sense an advocate for someone who might be controversial and is not necessarily that person that is controversial. It's a sort of mediating role in a certain sense that the attorney can play in the society.
Yes, I think so.
It's
I think
important.
right so. And I just left the breakfast this morning. The breakfast was with the head of the Anti-Defamation League.
Oh, you did.
And another man by the name of Abe Foxman, another man by the name of Jack Rudin, who was an old friend from the Rudin family, Jack and Louis Rudin, and a man named Charlie Rangel. Now, we were meeting for the purpose of discussing where to the black and Jewish community in New York City, having a long session. We do this with some frequency.
Yes, right, good. Because it's deteriorated, hasn't it?
It has.
From the days of the 60s, hasn't it?
It has.
In a sad way.
I remember when I headed in this city a thing called Soviet Jewry, and I went to Russia with Paul O'Dwyer, who is my neighbor now, incidentally, up in a place called Goshen, New York, where I have a little sticky place. Not really summer. That makes it sound too big, summer place. No, it's a place I go on weekends. Nice little place up there to rest a little bit.
Yeah, all right, I understand. Yeah,
I'm old now, and I need to rest.
How come you look so good?
I feel good.
Yeah, all right, that's why. Maybe, you know. No, but this role. Back to Malcolm, just quickly now.
Yes, certainly.
To be like that, and he was so unpopular and also on the edge at the time, and because all of the treatment of him. Do you see a comparison between him and Mr. Farrakhan now?
Yeah,
Or what
the
is
difference between
what is the difference
between
Mr. Farrakhan
Minister
and the
Malcolm
Million Man March
and
Mr. Farrakhan just made this pilgrimage around Africa and the Middle East, and
there's
you know,
a distinct difference.
Yeah, okay.
One in intellect. Malcolm was to me brighter than Farrakhan is today. That's one.
They're both charismatic.
Both charismatic. But as far as being charismatic, of the two, if I place them side by side, I would say that Mr. Farrakhan stands in the shadow of Malcolm.
Malcolm was in the league by himself. Right?
Yeah. And much of that which Mr. Farrakhan learned, he learned it through Malcolm. Malcolm X was a highly intelligent person, and what is so important is that he had nobody to lead him. You see, Mr. Farrakhan and others who have come along afterwards have someone to look to.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Yeah, that's right. He had to discover that.
He had to discover,
teach himself.
Yeah. He's the one who did more than anybody else to build the Nation of Islam. And then when he left and found a new religion, when I say found a new religion, I meant he believed what he called a pure Islamic religion. And he moved towards that, and then of course he was assassinated. So if I compare the two of them, I say that compare them with each other, I would say that Minister Farrakhan was not of the same status as Mr. Malcolm X. That's my own view. Yeah, and I knew them well. I still know them.
The fact that they're both controversial. And he's controversial in his own day. Mr. Farrakhan is controversial.
No question about it.
You would have talked to Mr. Foxman about Mr. Farrakhan, perhaps.
Oh, sure.
You know,
sure.
Do you understand the dynamic that I'm getting?
Sure.
You know, and you as consul.
I have no problems because I've been involved in this so many years. I talk about going to, as I mentioned earlier, going to Russia to witness a trial during the issue of Soviet jury, and incidentally also to see my nephew. I have a nephew who now lives in San Antonio, Texas. That Charles Rangel, the congressman, helped me get citizenship here. He is my oldest brother's son. My oldest brother was Dr. Carver's assistant and went to Russia in 1928 as a part of the first 5-year plan. He married a Russian Jew, and this woman and we thought the child were killed after my brother had been required to return to the United States because his passport was withdrawn from him. And years later, we discovered that my nephew was alive, though his mother was dead. And I brought him here to America, but I saw him in Moscow. At the time, I was there to monitor one of the trials there with regard to Soviet Jury.
Okay. Well, that wasn't the one that involved John Dewey or Moscow?
No.
Okay, a different one of them.
Yes.
The trials.
And so and as a matter of fact, I remember secreting some of the trial transcript on my body at that time when we thought if you got caught, they would do something to you.
Yes, right.
Seems all foolish now, but my nephew now lives here in San Antonio, Texas, with one of his children and his wife. He's now learned to speak English rather well.
Yes.
But what is so interesting is we talk about involvements in a variety of things, and we were talking about Jewish-black relations. Now, my nephew, who is the child of a Russian Jew and a African-American father, who said to a lady who is Mexican in San Antonio, who works for me at one of my radio stations, he said, not knowing she was Mexican, he said, I don't like Africans. And she's trying to help him. She said, I don't like Africans. I don't like Africans and Mexicans. So I had another nephew call him in to explain that he was African himself.
Good to have a sense
and his mother was Jewish.
Good to have a sense of humor in this world, isn't it? You got a good one, I think it is. As talking about being an advocate in the sense of an attorney and that sort of thing, being in a certain sense, you have raw power. You have political power, make laws, interpret them, enforce them. You have economic power that exists in the world. Then there's influence as well. And the people who can, in a certain sense, mediate between hard-held positions and that sort of thing. Seems to me an attorney can play that role.
If he but will, or if she will but do it.
Right. All right. They can't. And also, in a certain sense, media, in a certain sense, is one step removed. In a certain sense, it can have a strong influence. not necessarily power, but influence. I'm talking about influence and rather than power in the operation of the society. You've been involved in both at the same time you were in positions of direct power as borough president, obviously.
Now do
you understand the subtlety of what I'm trying to get
I owned a couple of radio stations around, and well, more than one, but many radio stations around the country. 2 here in New York City when I was in public office. I owned two newspapers, the Amsterdam News and the New York Courier, and that was exciting.
Yes.
One of the problems, however, is that you had to be very careful when you were in politics that things that appeared in your newspapers or on your radio station didn't injure you, because people looked at you as though you were the elephant, touching you in many parts.
Yes, you were really walking a tightrope.
Yes, exactly.
You really were.
Exactly.
Because you were serving in a very feisty time, if I may say.
Exactly.
So you were 66, 77?
60,
right during those assassinations. All
to
that
77,
time.
exactly.
And you were trying to write that, you know. But this idea of the media, and I know you now have a tremendous interest in media and high technology.
Yes.
Mr. Brown, our secretary, you know, he just invited you to meet with the G7 nations over in Europe and so forth as a representative of high tech, and you also have an interest, if I'm not mistaken, in this state-of-the-art system of cable development and so forth. And maybe you could talk how you segued, as it were, or how your movement into a media interest and a leading-edge media interest as far, and where it fits in terms of the future of our country, our nation, our community. You know, where does it...
You know, you opened up a barrel of worms.
That's what I said. I knew we needed 5 hours.
I'm excited about all this. We'll never finish at the time we have here today.
I know.
Because it's also a day when the president and the vice president are in town, and I'm going to meet with the president after I leave here. Yes, I have a meeting with him, with the and the Congressman Rangel.
Well, maybe we'll make this a little abbreviated and carry on.
I'd like to.
Well, this will just be an introduction to a longer program, but maybe you could touch on that. I know you're on a big.
I've always been fascinated since I was a child out on that farm when I had that corn cob to my mouth. I've been fascinated by high technology.
Get any photographs?
No, I wish I'd.
That would have been a good one.
That was a dream world then.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by high technology. I tell the story that we've moved from an agricultural society through an industrial society, and now we're at the cusp of a new high technology society that's going to carry us, that makes us a part of a global society. And in this society, people without talent gain through exposure, through education, are going to suffer cruelly. And for that reason, we have a thing called Touch and Tutor, the Magic of Learning. For 9 years, I have invested in a young lady and a young man in structuring an interactive touchscreen methodology and technology to teach abject illiterates to read and write.
Okay.
By use of things in their environment, things they see every day.
It's a multimedia thing.
Yes.
CD-ROM or something.
It's operational CD-ROM. Yes. I can't sell it, but nobody seems to want to buy it.
Maybe you're a little bit ahead. Maybe you're a little bit ahead of what is coming. You know, have you ever felt you were?
I think what has happened is when I started this project, when we started the project, there was no such thing as multimedia. As a matter of fact, we were beta users. The first card that Intel put out.
No kidding.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you won't believe that's less than 10 years ago.
I know. That's what's almost. I don't want to use the word frightening, but it is sobering. Because the pace, Mr. Sutton, if I may say so, is going like this, and it's not hyperbolic anymore. It's almost L-shaped.
Right.
Measured against the human experience. Something's going on.
And would you believe that I will have shipped in here today, on this day as we're talking,
March 11,
1996, 8 computers that will cost, with the monitor, they're 486s. They're not designed to be standalone, but they are standalone. That are really being designed. They were designed for us to connect into the internet. Would you believe that these are multimedia? For $850 computers.
Really?
No. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, boy.
We will retail them at $850. We pay $799 for them. The idea is, I have this view that by the year, God bless it. I want to live into 2000. By the year 2000,
absolutely. Where are we going to be in the New Year's
2000. We should celebrate. I don't know. We should, though. By the year 2000, I want, because I live at 10 West 135th Street in Harlem, I want 10,000 of my neighbors in Harlem, in the empowerment zone that Congressman Rangel has gotten the designation for, to be able to read, write, function, be computer experts, both as to workplace ability to operate a computer and to program computers. To do this, I'm bringing in these new computers that are now being assembled in Washington State, but within a year will be assembled here, and they will cost less than $850.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing things. The cost has eroded. And computer.
And they're multimedia. I'm not talking about.
And in 1971, when we were doing a lot of the things that we were doing, I was just getting started with this television business and so forth and everything.
I've watched you for years.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Silicon chip had not been invented.
Exactly.
We're living through some sort of amazing time now.
Someone said the other day that if we'd made the same advances in automobiles as we've made in computers and other electronic devices, the automobile would cost only $20.
All right, yeah, that's right. It would. And you'd be getting about
dramatic as you get more and more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And now polluting.
That's right.
That's another thing. It's not polluting, you know. George Gilder writes on this, Microcosm and other books that are real serious books. I'm not sure. He has these politics that are his. Yes, he can have his own, and everyone's allotted to various. But he writes and he says we're going to be coming. And you've been in telecommunications. You talked about footprints of telecommunications. Yes. He says we're coming into a telecomputing world. Do you think his analogy is right, that we're going to be computing, that our television is going to be coming up on computer screens, and we're going to, in a certain sense,
no question about it. As a matter of fact, listen, there's right now, as you know, there's a chip that we can put into our television set with an adjustment that will permit things to come by computer, or we can put it in the computer and pick up television. Now, but it does require right now, I'm trying to think of the name of that little chip. I get so...
You don't mean the V chip?
No, that's a good one too. I'm glad the V chip has come along.
You could talk a couple hours on,
One of the exciting things about, if I could digest for a moment, one of the exciting things about this world we're living in right now, things come off at us so very fast. I work a 19-hour day because I can't sleep, but I see and I see so many things, I consume so much material that when people ask me things, I want to regurgitate it all, and I get confused. Because there's so much I want to say.
I understand. You get information overload in the interest of the things. There's a language thing out of cybernetics. They say information overload permits pattern recognition at a level a higher systems level understanding. It makes it possible, perhaps, for us to see big patterns that we hadn't been able to see so well in terms of trying to understand what's going on.
I hadn't thought of it like that, though. Information overload.
I think they say that in cybernetic language, and in electronics they do, and it's a pattern, because things are coming so fast, and we need some sort of we're in an election year, we're in a political year, we're in a time of change and that sort of thing, and we need some sort of a vision that can allow us to, or do we, I wonder, do we need some sort of a vision that can allow us to transit from a condition that we've been historically developing in, and that we're coming into a new pattern that is in a certain existential or qualitative new way offering possibilities that we haven't had, and may be able to make it possible for us to get past some of the problems we're stumbling over with our inherited institutions. The New York Times, for instance.
That's fascinating.
The New York Times just ran this very series gave so much ink to this whole thing on the downside.
The series? Oh my, I'm so glad
they... Wasn't it amazing?
Listen, I'm so glad they ran it. It just ended on Saturday.
I've never seen it. Just ended,
But I'll tell you...
And that's an issue that is there, and yet, do you understand what I'm saying?
I well understand it. I was talking in that vein. I was talking to a good friend of mine, Jerry Wilson, who was in the state senate when I was there. He's a lawyer, and we talk rather often. We bump into each other. And I said to him one day, Jerry, before all of the series came out, I said, Jerry, I'm dealing with this issue of affirmative action. And I said, I'm convinced that a part of the problem is there is in this country an anger about what is happening to ordinary people.
Absolutely.
I said, I'm a big investor. Let me say it this way, I don't want anybody to write me and ask me, can I do something for them? Because all my money is going to education. But I said, Jerry, I see companies that I invest in like IBM, discharging 100,000 people, and the stock goes up.
Absolutely.
I see Coca-Cola getting rid of people, and the stock goes up. I see these giants downsizing, and the stock goes up. And I said, it doesn't make me feel good. I said, why is it in white society, because we talk about things like this, I said, why is it these people who are middle-aged managers at middle level, many of them with mortgages to pay, children to educate, are thrown out on a trash heap of society, and they can't get new jobs?
Yeah, right.
I said, those are black people. I would be out there.
Yeah, right.
And in organized black society, we'd be protesting. I said, why isn't anyone protesting?
Yeah, right.
He said, you don't understand, Percy. It's cultural.
Yeah.
I said, cultural? Heck, what do you mean it's cultural?
Yeah, right.
He said, I mean simply because we're part of a society with many, we don't really believe it's happening to us.
Denial. They're in denial, and they're not used to it. You know, they're experiencing some of the insecurities of people at the lower end of things that have experienced all of their lives. They didn't bring that off that well in the series. It's becoming politically relevant.
You're very well. They did not do that as well.
But that's been there for folks for a long time. And it's there for the human family as a large issue, that these technological systems are so tremendously productive, and it seems, in a certain way, that they're able to, in a sense, in a long-term structural way, displace human activity in the production process, and we've got societies where everybody's dependent upon these jobs in order to distribute income and keep a market going, keeping the whole system going. And the trickle down, the tax and spend, the two traditional party approaches, whether it's Mr. Clinton, God bless him, and wish him all well, and they will put those internet wires out there the other day, or Mr. Dole, it's going to be a thing. They're going to be talking about the traditional way, and yet there's something overarching and new that's needed philosophically. And could not the media be a place for the tete-a-tete on this philosophical issue to be dealt with?
In 1946, when I just come out of World War II, I was at Columbia University. I remember Charles and Mary Beard, historians,
yes, absolutely,
were talking about the new society, and they believed that in this new society, all of the, we were talking about robots and things of that nature, that we saw them, Popular Science and other things, we were talking about how we'd be flying from housetop to housetop, and said, don't worry. As we move from this agriculture to the industrial society, as we move forward from the industrial society to a yet unknown society, don't worry about machines, because for every invention, every machine, people will be needed to manufacture those machines. They were wrong.
I think so, don't you?
They were wrong.
And this is the biggest problem confronting mankind in a certain sense.
Exactly.
Isn't it? And it's not being dealt with in a certain sense.
It is not being dealt with.
And the technology is owned by so few people.
Exactly.
Okay, you know, and this is a question that is the major question that perhaps is, I mean, and yet, and so that series began to address this question,
yes,
you know, and that kind of thing. And it's one that you're interested in, and because it has implications in terms of the technology.
Oh, yes.
You know, there's something
very interested.
There's just something I cannot hardly believe, is the fact that we got abbreviated start on this sort of program and that sort of thing, that we've only just sort of
When can I come back?
Yeah, we want to structure it one way or another, because this is obviously altogether too short.
Yeah.
And so I want to just, I've run out of
thank
time,
you.
Percy.
Thank you very
for this
much.
abbreviated exhibit.
I'm so
and,
sorry.
It's been your pleasure for this, and we'll enlarge upon it in some way or another. We'll talk a little bit and figure out how we can extend this. It's been your pleasure. Percy Sutton, citizen, New York citizen, world citizen extraordinaire. Happy to have been able to bring you those perceptions. And between us here, after the cameras stop running, we'll try and figure out how we can bring some more to this program. And a pleasure to welcome you to the new studios of Manhattan Neighborhood Network. We didn't get a chance to talk about access and a whole lot of other things.
I should like to talk about
we would like to be able to. So it's your pleasure again. We'll be coming back, I think it's fair to say, with more and about these themes with Mr. Sutton. And it's been a pleasure to welcome him to the program, and we invite you to stay tuned for more coming up. And again, Percy Sutton, thank you very much for coming in, and also all of your work over the years, and very much for participating in your conversation.
Mr. Harold Chandler, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Until next time. Oh, shame. We're just getting going.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Now, I don't know how can we do this. I mean, I don't know. You know.
I'd be happy to.
I feel like we.
Yeah,
you know,
for example, I think that what has happened today, and that series, I must tell you, it was just so joyous for me. It's such a joy for me to read some of the things that I was wondering about what was happening. I go to these shareholders meetings. I go just to raise issues.
May I ask you, have you ever been aware of Lewis Kelso and the ESOP movement,
Yes,
employee stock ownership movement, or the general movement to try binary, what they call binary economics? Are you familiar?
Yeah. But I also, let me just tell you,
yes.
I am convinced. It's Percy E. Sutton.
Okay, well, we're going to have to...
That I am convinced. You need to get out?
Yes, that's the problem.
Okay. All right, okay.
We got another reason.
Okay.
You're convinced. Yeah.